right, let's see how our predictions did for last season. I know I got some ones wrong, I'm pretty sure, from memory of having recorded this video. So basically the way we did it is, as you can see on the screen, we basically broke it down into top four, 2 Europa League spots, Conference League plus top half, middle table, relegation scrap, so the 3 places just above it, and then the relegation itself. We also did the winner of the Carabao Cup, winner of the FA Cup, winner of the Premier League, obviously, winner of the Champions League. We also did Young Player of the Season. We did Surprise Player of the Season, which I think ended up being the same player in my opinion, at least in this video, but you can make up your own choices on that one. But I think I picked a pretty good one on that one. Player of the Season, Golden Boot winner, Champions League winner. So let's start off and see how I kind of went about the relegation places here that could go in the relegation zone based on just last season, where they missed out by basically 1 point. I say missed out, but they managed to dodge it by like 1 point or 2. Bournemouth is definitely one of the teams that they're going to be there because obviously being newly promoted, your odds on to go back down. So I think I'm basically putting like all the bunch of teams that I think could be relegated. I don't think this is like the exact order. I think I put like 6 or 7 of them in there, and then I kind of go from there. So let's see. Southampton is another one. Really struggled towards the end of last season. Hopefully I leave Southampton in there because I got that one right.
Missed the drop. Ultimately comfortable in the end, but again, still not where they want to be. I think that Brentford, second season syndrome could be an issue for them this season as well.
Hopefully I didn't leave Brentford
Leeds
in there.
United under Jesse Marsh haven't inspired me that much either. Well, Fulham and Nottingham Forest, again, 2 teams that were newly promoted. So these are pretty much like the 7 that I think could go in here. So I'm just going to move them all up here, and then I'll slowly put them in one by one, who I think is going to be relegated.
Okay.
And in what order. But I think the most obvious one out of all of these to come 20th is going to be Bournemouth. And the reason for that is, if you've watched any of Planet FPL's Correspondent Week, it's fantastic. Make sure you go check it out.
Shout out Planet FPL.
One for each team on there. It's great, great stuff. Make sure you go check out the Patreon as well. I'm certainly going to be doing that soon. Basically, Bournemouth just don't have any defenders, pretty much. And again, we're all looking at Haaland, captain in Bournemouth for game week 2.
Yep.
And it's just going to be probably a nightmare for Bournemouth to defend against. They are looking to play a 5-4-1. According to the Correspondent, and they just don't have enough defenders to play that system, basically. So Scott Parker's not happy. You would know him. He used to manage Fulham, and it just seems like when things go
at the time, to be honest,
bad for Scott Parker, he just can't really turn it around, and the game kind of passes his teams by. So I think Bournemouth is probably in that similar scenario yet again. They'll probably be a bit more possession oriented than his Fulham was, and a slightly different team, but they still need to get signings through the door before the end of August. And I think Fulham probably goes in 19th. Similar situation.
Well, let's talk on Bournemouth for a second. So a lot of FPL managers or people that do these sorts of predictions in the footballing space did predict Bournemouth. I apologize, Bournemouth. They ended up finishing 15th, 39 points, well clear of the relegation zone by the time it came around to the scrap. Scott Parker was actually sacked after game week 4. You remember Liverpool won 9-0 at Anfield. That was when a lot of us captained Mo Salah, and he got not a single return in the game. But then Gary O'Neill was able to get Fulham to turn it, Bournemouth to turn it around. The likes of Solanke and Billing really stepped up. They were a lot more solid defensively. They had more of a style, more of a shape, and I guess they kind of pulled the trigger. We always thought they pulled the trigger a bit early on Scott Parker, but turns out it was a good decision, I think, overall in the end, because they did end up staying up. Whether Bournemouth stay up this coming season, that's another thing to be determined. We'll do that when we do our predictions for this coming season. But yeah, Bournemouth in 20th wasn't the best choice, but we had kind of the right idea. They ended up staying up in 15th, so 5 places off that one. Fulham, I don't know what I'm thinking here.
I think that they're just another team. Again, Marco Silva, manages them now, formerly of Everton. He also is just not happy with the signings that they need in place.
That's true.
I think Fulham has slightly better quality.
Time.
I think Mitrovic had a fantastic last season and is a different beast than what he was a couple seasons ago in the Premier League. I just think that just not enough quality in depth that'll get them out of the relegation zone this season.
So they actually did end up adding a few more players. The likes of Andres Pereira came over, was a revelation. They had Paulinho in there as well, who was kind of a bit of an unknown, turned out to be the tackling beast. And they were actually quite good defensively, and Fulham ended up kind of falling off a bit towards the end of the season. They might see a bit of second season syndrome potentially. But 10th place was obviously a brilliant finish for Fulham. I think a lot of, people would have predicted them to be somewhere near the relegation scrap. No one probably predicted them anywhere near the absolute top half of the table, really. So let's see who I put in 18th. I think I ended up putting Everton. So now this one is a bit of a tricky one. I think that all of these teams have merits to potentially go down, and I think 4 out of 5 of them definitely.
Each one of them could easily do really well this season, and I think each one of them would do really badly this season.
So Brentford,
the team that I'm actually going to put here, yes. And this is not going to be a very liked thing, but I unfortunately think Everton are going to be the other team that gets relegated.
They were close
this season.
They were very close,
and the reason being for that is because the signings haven't been that inspiring. Yes, Dwight McNeil's, done okay, but Dominic Calvert-Lewin looks to be injured before the start of the season again.
Yep.
And they just have no real replacement there. It just seems like Frank Lampard is maybe tactically inept at times.
Yes.
And that is why, personally, I think that Frank Lampard is going to be the first manager to be sacked as well. I think...
So Frank Lampard actually wasn't the first manager to be sacked. It was Scott Parker. Funnily enough, Frank Lampard actually lasted quite a long time at Everton. Everton were basically a game away from being relegated, so it was pretty close, all things considered. But if they don't get their act together again, they will finish in the bottom 3. I think I mentioned something about them bringing in someone who could steady the ship. Let's see.
It's going to be similar to what happened last season, where they had Rafa Benitez for half of it. Frank Lampard might get off on the bad start, and just not be up to the task, basically. They might bring in an interim, or bring in somebody who they think they can steady the ship, maybe a Sam Allardyce, or see if they can keep them out of relegation. But ultimately, I think this...
Which they actually ended up doing. Sean Dyche was the man to come in, did keep them out of the relegation positions by the end of the season, and looks to be their manager going forward, and probably will keep them in around that... anywhere from 10th to 17th, I want to say. That's kind of their goal, I think, for the time being. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, Frank Lampard, he did end up getting sacked. It was Scott Parker who got sacked after game week 4. I think it was the most managers sacked in a season. It was like 10, 12. It was a crazy amount. Because you had Scott Parker, you had Frank Lampard, no, not twice. Well, effectively twice, because he got fired at the end of the season because he didn't only stay at Chelsea for a while. You had Steven Gerrard. You had who else did you have? You had Graham Potter. You had Thomas Tuchel. Yeah, remember Chelsea got 2 managers fired in the season. You had Jesse Marsh. You had Javi Gracia, 2 managers at Leeds as well. Yeah, there was quite a few. Patrick Vieira on St. Patrick's Day, which is ironic. So yeah, a bit interesting. So kind of a mixed bag there. Everton I was close with. The other 2 I was not, unfortunately, with my predictions. But let's see if I did mid-table or like the relegation scrap a little bit better. Let's see.
Leeds in 17th. I'm just going to move these ones up here just for the time being.
I was one off on both.
I think Leeds will be the one that will probably potentially be the one that could go back down. I think that not enough strength and depth.
True.
They lost 2 of their most crucial players in Calvin Phillips and Rafinha.
That definitely hurt them.
Man City and Barcelona, respectively. I just don't see what they could potentially do apart from just try to attack teams, because I think defensively they're all over the place. They have to rely on Melié's shot-stopping ability, but even with the ball at his feet and trying to play out from the back, he's not the most assured. He's very confident, but it can make mistakes as well. So I think Leeds could be in a position where they do concede just too many goals, but they might just barely scrape it over the likes of Everton, because I think at least with Leeds, you get a consistent amount of goals across their team because of the way that they play. With Everton, it's kind of more focused into crossing it into one guy, and I'm not sure if that's going to be, you know, the kind of weapon that you need. If it gets figured out, well, that's the one plan. Leeds will just keep attacking you from all different angles.
So Leeds actually did end up getting relegated. So Everton and Leeds were literally the two away around in this instance. I think I put Leicester way up the table, but that was kind of a bit of an anomaly. I have the Premier League table off to my second monitor here. So if I look at goals scored for Leeds, they ended up scoring 48 goals, which ended up being 14 more than Everton, which is you know, quite a lot. So that was kind of a good prediction. They scored more than Southampton. They scored more than Forest. They scored more than Bournemouth, more than West Ham, more than Wolves, more than Chelsea, more than Crystal Palace. And then they were below basically everyone in the top half. So Leeds actually scored quite a bunch of goals. The problem was they conceded 78 goals, which was kind of the prediction here that Leeds would concede a boatload of goals. And that proved to be an issue. Meslier was not assured with his feet. Well, he was confident, but he made a lot of mistakes as well. So that kind of put him on the back foot. So that prediction I feel pretty confident with, even though I got the position 2 places off. They finished 19th. We got them in at 17th. So let's see who I put 16th, akin to the Leipzig style. In 16th, I'm actually going to go with Southampton. Again, it's probably going to be pretty close between them, Leeds, and Everton, I think. I personally see Southampton recruiting decently well. It's just the system change that I'm worried about, because just because not Southampton,
you swap to a 3 center back system, a 3-4-3 or a 3-4-1-2, or however you want to play it. If you have your wing backs kind of playing in a flat 5, however which way you want to do it, having an extra defender doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be as defensively solid. We saw that with Man United, and we've seen that with other teams as well. So that actually ended up being quite true. Ralph Hasenhüttl was another manager who was sacked, and unfortunately, replacements could not stop Southampton from going down. We did see him try to fiddle around with back 3s, back 5s, back 4s, all kinds of things. And for whatever reason, Southampton could not stop conceding goals. They conceded 73, which was the second most in the Premier League. They only scored 36 goals, which was the, I want to say, third in bottom 3 for goals scored, and probably half of those were James Ward-Prowse like free kicks. So I think that is a major issue that they had to resolve. They didn't do it in time. In terms of being close from 16th to 20th, 16th had 38 points, 20th had 25, but from 16th to 19th was only ended up being 7 points, which was, you know, very close at the time. Like, at any given time on the last day, Everton, Leeds, or Leicester could have all made it out of the relegation zone with help from one another. So I did get that aspect a bit correct. Let's see who I put in 15th. Season, I think their signings have been very good. I think that Jesse Lingard is a fantastic addition
1 place off
for their squad.
By literally
the main reason to that is because Forest and Fulham and Bournemouth in particular, they're not going to have much of the ball, or at least you would think that they wouldn't have as much of the ball as other teams.
True.
And that favors Jesse Lingard quite a lot. And if he's going to be playing in the 3-4-1-2 system, in behind the likes of Brennan Johnson and another striker, looks like it might be Surridge off the start of the season for Forest. But Jesse Lingard loves spinning into open space and running into open space like he did for West Ham, and could be a fantastic FPL asset at 6 million. But I think the gap between 15th and 16th is going to be much bigger. I think it's going to be at least.
So I was a bit wrong there. I said the gap between 15th and 16th was going to be much bigger. It ended up only being 1 point. It was actually quite close, like points-wise, from 13th all the way down. There was a slight gap between Chelsea and Palace. And then it was just Fulham up was 52 points plus. So a bit wrong on that one. In terms of place, 1 place off by literally a point. Bournemouth was 39 points. Forest was 38 and 16th. I did say Jesse Lingard was going to be good in that 3-4-1-2 kind of system. It actually ended up being the likes of Brennan Johnson, who I thought was going to be more through a middle player initially. They ended up getting Awani in there. playing through the middle, who scored some crucial goals for them down the stretch. But they also had Gibbs White, and they kind of played two number 10s kind of in behind a focal point up front, which allowed them to, when they got the ball, control, gain more control between those three players when they did hit on the break. Because Forest, especially away from home, very defensive minded, very compact, and kind of tried to spring on the break. So our prediction was pretty okay there. Let's see who I put in. I believe I put Brentford in 14th.
At least a win, maybe 4 points in that kind of area. And I think from 15th up will be comfortable. I think it's the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, which
So
could all
15th
be like
upwards was
clustered
pretty
and could be a
comfortable
bit,
in the end.
nervy days.
I was right there.
And then in 14th, I've gone with Brentford as well, because I think the fact that, second season syndrome and all that, but I think that Brentford, they're looking at Damsgaard to potentially bring in. They have Josh De Silva, who I think is a fantastic player.
Damsgaard was
and
good.
is
Josh Silva
highly
was
rated
good.
by the Brentford fans. They still have Mbomo. They still have Ivan Toney. They're looking to go to a 4-3-3 system, I think, this season as well.
Which they
could
did at
help them
times,
out in the attacking areas, because Mbomo plays better off the right. And Toney plays better when he's the lone striker through the middle.
That is true.
It just adds less defensive solidity, but I think Brentford are very good going forward. If they can get the creativity side of things down, then I think they will have no problems this season. Maybe some issues at center back, but I think Rhea's a good enough goalkeeper with his distribution that he can potentially mask some of that in there. I think Brentford have also signed Ben Mee, if I'm correct in saying that as well, who I think is, experienced head, someone who can come in and help out as well to kind of cover for the potential early season injuries that they may have.
Yeah, because I think Brentford off the start had a couple of injuries at center back. Ben Mee was brilliant for them as well, helped them on set pieces. David Rhea, as we know, could potentially be going to Spurs and is highly talented and could be making that big move. We did see at various points during the season that Brentford would shift to a 4-3-3. When they're up against opposition that they thought that they could compete with. They were much more effective in that when, Toney was the lone striker in that attacking wise. And then when it came to the 3-5-2, and Mbomo found himself a bit more, effective in that sort of system, as it's a bit more counterattacking break style of play, the big man, small man kind of up front play. And we know what we're going to get from Brentford now. So those sorts of things are something to keep an eye on for at least next season for FPL terms. That if, hey, look, Brentford have a bunch of fixtures where they're probably going to play 4-3-3, Toney might be worthy of getting in. This is obviously for the second half of the season, because obviously at the time of recording, he's still serving his ban that he had for his betting accusations or things, or presumably he's found guilty considering they banned him. So he won't be available until January, which why Mbomo could be pretty useful. But 14th was way off there. Brentford ended up finishing 9th. They were actually in contention for a Conference League place. But kind of the similar things that I was talking about were things that they actually did end up kind of coming to fruition. They only ended up scoring 46 goals. No, they scored 58 goals actually. Conceded 46, so they were much more creative. So we were right on that part, that if they could get that side down, they would do really well. And they ended up doing well overall. So position, we're off by 4 or 5 places there. Who did I put in 13th?
Aston Louise.
Interesting.
Maybe.
Let me
would fit into the team as like the anchor. You have John McGinn, newly promoted captain as well. Will play potentially alongside Ramsey in midfield. Does that leave a place out for the likes of Douglas Luiz? Maybe not. Maybe in a situation they might play in a diamond at times as well, and maybe play just 2 strikers. That would mean Coutinho gets left out potentially. I just think that Steven Gerrard still has a situation where he has to kind of work out his best 11, because I still don't think he never knows that. Leon Bailey's impressed in preseason at 5 million in FPL, could be very
pretty good when he wasn't injured, I will admit.
Personally, though, I think there's still questions to be kind of answered there. I think their defensive structure is better now that they have Diego Carlos in there and Konsa. They can be both rash at times, but I think that it should be quite
and Diego
solid
Carlos
there. Cash and Digne, assuming both fit, are very good. Martinez is fantastic at playing the ball out from the back and a good shot stopper. Had a bit of a poor season last season, but I think should definitely improve.
Well, he won the
World
Cup. I think
overall Villa will probably be disappointed with a 13th place finish, but I can easily see anywhere from 10th to 13th being quite close. That's probably the next jump from Brentford up to 13th is probably going to be like maybe that 3-4 point gap. And then all the way up to maybe even the Conference League spot. It's going to be very, very close, I think. A lot of these teams could be interchanged. Next, so I kind of got a little bit right there. I said from 13th to the next position was going to be at least 3 points. It ended up being, it was Wolves and Chelsea there, and it was 41 to 44 points, so kind of right. Steven Gerrard never got his team worked out. They were in 17th, scrapping to stay out of the relegation spot. I think 12 games into the season, Unai Emery comes in, gets them Europa Conference League. Plain and simple, it just shows that Steven Gerrard was not up to task. Unai Emery, very experienced manager, very solid, will probably do well in the Conference League next season, could easily win it, as well as West Ham did this season. So, yeah, this was under the assumption that Steven Gerrard would stay at Aston Villa. They probably would have potentially stayed around there, or might they got relegated, who knows. But kind of a middle ground there. I said they could be up to 10th, they ended up being 7th, so it's a bit wrong on that one. 13th from 7th, 6 places off. But again, this was under the lens that Steven Gerrard was going to be staying as manager for the entire season. But they were able to bring in Unai Emery, who was able to get them in a very, very good spot for next season.
Let's see who
so
we got.
14th, 13th. In 12th place, I'm going to go with Wolves. Okay. And the reason I'm going to go with Wolves is because I just don't think that they're going to score as many goals as they should. They're switching to more of attacking.
True, they only scored
like an attacking system.
Goals.
And again, another 4-3-3.
Premier League, by the way.
Does Jimenez hinder them? I'm not so sure. I think that personally they're better off without Jimenez. Unfortunately, after that injury, he's just not the same player.
And this came to fruition
I just think that he
unfortunately
is just kind of the shadow of himself, which is kind of a shame to see because I think he was a fantastic FPL asset, fantastic footballer a few seasons ago before that head injury. But I do think that the likes of Neto and Podence, and especially Morgan Gibbs-White, could be very influential into how many goals they do score. That being said, I think they're probably going to be lower than what they had expected. And Wolves could be one of those teams that's like, not a dark horse per se, but a team that could be, they can go as high as potentially 7th, but they could also go as low as like 18th, potentially, depending on how the news...
That pretty much hits the nail on the head. So Morgan Gibbs-White got sold, I think it was £40 million, to Nottingham Forest. Neto was injured for long portions of the season. Podence was injured for parts of the season, as well as just not playing well either. Wolves, I think, at one point were literally 20th. They didn't score very many goals, but when they did, they made the points count. Lopetegui came in and was able to kind of steady the ship, get them out of the relegation zone and being quite comfortable in the end. From 7th to 18th was a legitimate thing. We got them almost bang on. We put them in 12th. They ended up being 13th. So just the one position off there. So quite happy with that prediction overall for Wolves. Who have I put into 11th?
Crystal Palace, I think. I think Crystal Palace is a fantastic team. Again, the loss of Conor Gallagher is massive, but I've seen enough in preseason to know that Eze is probably going to be more than capable of taking up that role. Defensively, there's still questions for that central midfield, but they have made signings in that midfield area to help strengthen that. They have plenty of depth up front. They also have Zaha, obviously still being a mainstay. Elise, who was fantastic at the latter half of last season. And I think that their defensive structure is now in place. They've also just signed a new goalkeeper as well. And I think that they are looking good, The only question I would say is potentially they could get off on a bad start. Their fixtures aren't great to start with. But if they can kind of ride that wave, maybe pick up a point versus Arsenal on the opening day of the season, there's chances where they could potentially progress and even break that top half of the table. Because it seems like every season, Crystal Palace just barely can't make it into the top 10.
True. So Crystal Palace did get off to kind of a decent start from what I remember. They kind of rode it out, and then they got into that second wave of like block of fixtures where they were playing a bunch of different tough teams. And Vere was actually picking up points here and there. And I think that he would have still got a bunch of points had Roy Hodgson not come in, to be honest. I think they pulled the trigger on that sacking too early. Personally, I also think it was just a bit of a meme that literally they fired him on St. Patrick's Day, which is just the craziest thing ever. All things considered, though, I think that this prediction was pretty bang on, to be honest. Eze was fantastic. They do have up front, they do have they have players. They don't have necessarily depth. The defensive structure, when they had the likes of Mitchell and Anderson and Gahey in there with Sam Johnston in goal, they were pretty good defensively for the most part. They had Decore in there in central midfield, and they were causing teams a bit of frustration when they were playing against them, and were able to obviously hit on the break with the likes of Zaha, Eze, Elise, Jordan Ayew, these sorts of pacey players. And I think I got the prediction bang on. 11th, and they were 11th. So yeah, Palace apparently easy to predict. Let's see who I put in the top half, or in 10th. Speaking of 10th, we're going to put Brighton in 10th. I think Brighton are just kind of that team that they're always going to be really good. Doesn't matter which personnel you put in there. True. Doesn't matter who is on the pitch. You could have the goalkeeper playing up front, the forward playing in goal. If Graham Potter is the manager, Brighton will do well. Obviously, the loss of Yves Bissouma could be pretty big, and if Cucurella does go to Chelsea or Man City or whoever he's rumored to go to, there could be a scenario where, yes, they're probably not as great defensively, but Graham Potter typically finds out what the weakness is and then corrects it with either signings or improving a player or changing their position. And Leandro Trossard at wingback has been fantastic in preseason as well. I just think Brighton are just solid. They're the 10th place team for me. So it was a bit of a weird one because Chelsea went a few games and then they sacked Tuchel and then they brought in Graham Potter, taking him from Brighton. But also Brighton did bring in De Zerbi, who basically did these sorts of things where he was able to manipulate the team, play whoever he wanted, and Brighton was actually better after Graham Potter left, which not many people would have thought, myself included. But he came in and did really well. Trossard ended up going to Arsenal in January, but he was playing really well in that kind of wing-back role, which was kind of ended up being like left inside forward role, to be honest. And Brighton are in Europe next season. So we were a bit off there, but I don't think anyone would have predicted how crazy good of a job De Zerbi would have done. I think probably at the highest, maybe 7th, if you would have said, oh, they had a fantastic, brilliant season. But like basically comfortably 6th was not on the cards, I don't think. So yeah, congratulations to Brighton. First time in Europe, I believe. Let's see who I put in 9th. Moving on to, actually, we're going to talk about the Carabao Cup now. Oh, Carabao and I think it's pretty obvious who I'm probably going to choose. I think it's going to be Man City. So we got that one wrong. Turns out it was Man United. Yay! Stopped City from winning the quadruple, funnily enough. Well, actually, what was it, Nathan Jones or whoever the Southampton manager was that stopped Pep Guardiola, because they were in the semi-final. Quarterfinal. They lost to Southampton. Southampton then played Newcastle. Newcastle beat them, and then we met them in the final. So wrong on that one, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure I just said something along the lines of, hey, look, Man City win everything. So pretty much that's that. I think I put the FA Cup afterwards, too. So let's see. FA Cup, who I put. Most winning team, as it were. I'm going to go with Arsenal. I think Arsenal have looked fantastic in pre-season. I think they have a very good chance of winning silverware this season. Potentially also in Europa League, they could go quite far as well. I just think Arsenal are very good. I think from what I've seen in preseason, how that front three is working with Martinelli, Jesus, and Bukayo Saka, which was very good, by the way. They could be fantastic this season. So I'm going to go with Arsenal for the FA Cup and Man City for the Carabao Cup. So we kind of got that one a bit wrong, but Arsenal did play really well this season. They got knocked out of the 2 domestic cups quite early, actually. Europa League in the round of 16, or at least somewhere around the round of 16. They got knocked out to Sporting. So yeah, I got that one a bit wrong. City won everything else, didn't they? So it's kind of bad. But they have the 115 charges to kind of worry about Yeah. We'll just laugh about that. Who did I put in ninth?
With
Newcastle. Okay.
United. And I think Newcastle, that's going to be a fantastic position for them this season.
Well,
I think
they did even better.
that should be their goal this season. Get into the top half of the table, show some kind of expression on the ball, show the playing style that Eddie Howe wants to implement. They're bringing in a couple good signings here and there. Trippier from last season, although he only played a couple games, was a revelation on the team. Bruno Guimaraes is potentially in a couple years' time going to be snapped up by one of the top teams. Like how they managed to get him and how good he is just crazy. But
Bruno Guimaraes
could be loyal to Newcastle. He could be the reason why Newcastle end up finding a European place in a couple seasons' time.
No,
I think top half is what Newcastle should be looking for. If they can manage to scrape 7th place, I think that would be a brilliant season. That's basically would be like everything went correct, everything was fantastic, everyone stayed fit, they played out of their minds, and then they got 7th place. I think that would be probably the best possible finish, I think personally, for Newcastle this season. But I think,
well, you're wrong, past pilot, because they ended up getting 4th. Newcastle getting 4th place, so we were 5 positions off that one. I don't think anyone predicted Newcastle to be in the top half of the table initially, at least in the top quarter. Everyone was kind of a bit skeptical. They were saying, okay, well, they got Bruno Guimaraes, they've got Trippier. Can they push on from that? Is it just, hey, look, they've not been found out as of yet? But they were way better. They were way better. They were super good defensively. They were very good attacking-wise. They scored 68 goals last season, which is almost as much as Brighton, who scored 72. Too shy of Spurs, who scored 70 even. They scored more than Manchester United with 58, although the United didn't score very many. And they conceded tied for least with Manchester City with 33 goals. So, yeah, just a brilliant season by Newcastle. Hats off to them. Will Europe potentially hamper them? Not too sure, because they're splashing the cash now by buying Sandro Tonali for, I think it's 70 million euros. He's going to be brilliant. Bruno Guimaraes could be scary next season. He could be playing in the number 10, which is a lot of the season he was playing more in kind of like the in the pivot in the 2 in a 4-2-3-1. So if you have the likes of Tonali in there in central midfield, and the likes of Joe Linton kind of playing as the box-to-box, Tonali playing as more of like the metronome, and then Bruno Guimaraes is kind of like the all-action number 10, we could see a pretty easy bargain there for Bruno Guimaraes. As well. Let's move on to the next 2 places. So let's see. I think I put Leicester in 8th. I
think it's going to be Leicester City who just missed out in 8th. And I think that's mainly due to the fact that they just haven't signed anyone at the moment. I still think their squad is good enough quality in order for them to get 8th place. If they were to lose the likes of James Maddison and lose the likes of Yuri Tielemans, yes, they recruit well, but those players are very good, very solid, and have been very important to Leicester over the past few seasons. I can see them going down to as low as probably the mid-table section, 11th through 14th, and in worst case scenario, they could be way down if they had Vardy out injured for a while and they lost both of those 2 players. So Maddison was actually injured in and out of the team. Vardy was injured for a lot of the season as well, and just wasn't his former self. And they ended up getting relegated basically because of it. Just not a consistent enough, defensively. They did score a decent number of goals, 51, which was a lot more than the likes of the teams that were all down there. It was more than everyone in the bottom half. They scored the most goals than anyone in the bottom half, Fulham and upwards. Scored more. They tied with the same amount of goals as Aston Villa. It's just defensively they were shocking. They scored 68, conceded 68 goals. So that was their real issue. They could not stop conceding goals, and they ended up getting relegated because of it. A lot of defensive issues. Yuri Tielemans just was checked out. Ndidi just looks kind of just done. And they kind of just got ran through. Maddison is more of a luxury style player. He's not going to be the one to kind of run around the pitch a lot.
If you have control of the ball, he's brilliant. If you don't have control of the ball, he's not really that useful because he's not the greatest defensively. But obviously on the ball, he's a brilliant player. And that was kind of Leicester's issue, was that they conceded a lot more than they scored. So, and it ended up punishing them. So kind of half right on that one. But again, we put them in 8th, and they ended up getting 18th. So bit incorrect there. In the Conference League, I think I put the Conference League place in 7th. I put West Ham, I think. League position, I think they have a very good squad at the moment. Maybe some slight injury concerns at center back. They now have brought in Scamacca as well, who I think is a fantastic signing. Very akin to the way West Ham want to play. And I think that because of that, with that squad rotation, I think that West Ham will now get the European trophy they've been looking for, and they'll get in the Conference League. They were so close last season in the Europa League,
True.
But I think the Conference League, slightly easier. They have the backup for Antonio. They have depth in the attacking areas. They've brought in Aguerd, who by the time the European fixtures rolls around, he should be good to go at center back. They have 2 very good goalkeepers in Fabianski and Areola, who are perfectly in their own right able to come in and do a job in any situation. I think West Ham are going to win the Conference League. What a shout by me. I got West Ham to be in the Conference League. Although 7th position was not where they ended up finishing. They ended up finishing 14th. But regardless of that, I said that the Conference League would be a little bit easier for them. They did end up getting the Conference League, so congratulations to West Ham. So that was a pretty good shout. Scamacca was a bit wrong on that. Aguerd, bit wrong on that. He wasn't him and Kerr weren't the greatest at times. They did have center back deficiencies for the most part. Yeah, so... but yeah, the Conference League shout. We got that one bang on. So let's see, who did I put in 6th? I think I put United. Yeah, I did.
Season. I just have this feeling.
I need to have more faith.
Think United can still progress and finish 6th place, because I think that they can do something in Europa League, and hence why I've got them to finish and finish 6th and win the Europa League. Now this does get them a bye into the Champions League. So United didn't end up winning the Europa League. That ended up going to Sevilla. And had United beaten Sevilla, which they should have been able to do, they were cruising at 2-0 up, ended up drawing that game, and then ended up losing away in Spain. Ten Hag, I think, did a fantastic job. United finished 3rd. I was 3 places off there, so I'm glad that I was wrong on that one, but being a United fan. But I think that United probably should have won the Europa League, all things considered, seeing how it kind of panned out, seeing what teams ended up playing in the final. Sevilla was definitely beatable. Roma wasn't the most difficult outlet either. I think Roma were actually kind of hard done by a little bit in the final. I think United could have comfortably beat both teams in a one-off game for sure. Yeah, I got that one slightly wrong. United did a little bit better. They got Champions League back, but it was through getting 3rd place, which is quite nice. So, moving on to who did I put in? Let's see, who did I put in 5th? Give away the top 4 spot to any other team, and ultimately Spurs came out with them. Personally, who am I gonna put here? I think that Arsenal miss out again, and here's why. It's mainly due to the fact that I think that Chelsea are not done in the transfer market, and I think Chelsea's league, they will figure it out. And I think eventually they will solve the issues that need to be solving. Also, Sterling. Yeah, just a bit wrong there. Chelsea ended up finishing 12th. I think I ended up putting Chelsea 4th here in this one. But Arsenal were leading the way the entire time, basically, until City decided they wanted to win it. So, came up short. Did Arsenal. I had them in 5th. I mentioned something about European competition that could affect them, which it kind of did. It kind of put their focus more towards the league. They still ended up getting towards the last 8 games of the season, where the season is basically won, and they tripped at the finish line, basically. So, or coming up to the finish line.
So kind of got that one a bit wrong. They do end up getting back to Champions League football. That could hinder them. It could also, if they don't get the Declan Rice signing over the line, they lose Xhaka, they lose Partey, they could be much weaker than what they were last season. So that's kind of one to keep an eye on. I then talk about Chelsea, which is just kind of a bit yikes. Anywhere across the front three. And it's the type of player that, given Ben Chilwell and Reece James's delivery, I think I'm talking about Raheem Sterling, a tap-in merchant for many goals this season for Chelsea. Also in FPL could be very good at 10 million as well. He wasn't, by the way. I think that Arsenal, now that they have European football, they have Europa League, assuming they don't get knocked out, crazily early and come fourth in their group or something like that, I think that may take their eye potentially off of the top four. And I think that Chelsea might just slip in when they're able to, because Chelsea are a team that, if things aren't going right, they'll sack the manager and then they go on and win the Champions League or something. Well, they did sack the manager, and then they sacked the manager again, and they could have sacked the manager again, and then sacked probably the made-up manager that comes in. But yeah, Chelsea didn't do that. Chelsea kind of just played bad throughout the entire season. They never got it right under Potter. They never got it right under Tuchel. And it just kind of spiraled out of control there. Todd Bowley comes in, spends a boatload of money, and then kind of finesses a lot of them back out to Saudi Arabian clubs somehow in the summer, which is just baffling. And that's mainly due to the fact that they have links with Saudi Arabia, because the major stakeholder in Chelsea is Clear Lake Capital, which is Saudi run. So a bit of kind of cooking the books or finagling there. So that'll probably be brushed on the carpet. Nobody will probably pay attention to it. But football's unfortunately going that way. Yeah, so Chelsea are probably going to sign some players. They got Nkunku coming in, who's a much better quality player than basically all of the ones that they did sign. I did say Sterling would be good. I did say Koulibaly would be good. Sterling just kind of looked lost. The whole team looked lost. Koulibaly looked like he just can't hang in the Premier League. So he's going to Saudi Arabia as well in their league. So get a good paycheck, which is what it seems like a lot of players that are going to Saudi Arabia are going to do, as the monetary value of these contracts are quite high. Who did I put in third place? I think I put Spurs. Let's see. Versus Liverpool, Man City, but ultimately I think that Spurs will be drinking the Kool-Aid, man. Is probably has the best chance, at least as it stands right now. However, I do think that the flop of the season will play for Spurs. And unfortunately, I think that's going to be Richarlison. And the only reason I say that is because he's typically been playing game in, game out for the likes of Everton. And I think that he's going to be subbed on in most games. And he's going to be potentially the replacement through the middle. He could play off the left as well. It doesn't necessarily play off the right, but it's mostly going to be utilized from the start, at least in the European competitions, potentially if Kane needs a break, like if they're playing a weaker opposition away from home or something like that, he might be in from the start. And I just don't see Richarlison living up to his potential price tag. I think he's a good player. I just don't think the price tag of, I think it was £60 million. I'm just not sure if that's gonna be the best value for the pound, if you know what I mean there. So I got that bang on, because Richarlison scored, what, 1 Premier League goal, 0 Premier League goals, more yellow cards than Premier League goals, something like that. That was the meme. So I got that kind of right, actually. So I'll take that. That's a pretty big W there. He was probably the worst signing of the Premier League season. You know, people will say the likes of Darwin Núñez. Darwin Núñez still scored goals in European competitions as well as in the Premier League, and then kind of got put to the bench a little bit. People will say Anthony from Man United, but he scored 3 in his first 3 to start the Premier League. Remember, Anthony and Darwin Núñez both have not played in the Premier League until this season, whereas Richarlison has been playing in the Premier League for the last few seasons. And Richarlison did start from the bench a lot. He did play on the right a lot, which he didn't play very much. Doesn't look very good there. If they sell Harry Kane this summer, which looks unlikely, Harry Kane's probably going to run out his contract. Richarlison is going to have a bit part role again, I personally think. Just, he only plays decent for Brazil, apparently. Is living off kind of a couple goals that he scored in that one game with like the bicycle kick and whatnot. And just hasn't played well on a Spurs shirt. He's just literally not played well at all. So we got that one pretty bang on for a flop of the season. Let's see. Who did I put top 2? I got Liverpool and Man City. Hopefully I put Man City and I can at least get that one right. Because Spurs and Chelsea being 3rd and 4th and Arsenal in 5th is a nightmare pick.
Get used to kind of the bit part role and see how that kind of pans out.
Please put City first. At least
Moving
I can get that,
into the top 2, who is going to be the top 2? I think it's going to be the same as what it was last season. I think Liverpool are going to come second, and I think Man City are going to come first. There's no reason for me to not say that Man City are going to come first. They are odds-on favorites.
I mean, it's just true. I mean, we just need to predict Man City to win the league every season until otherwise, basically. They've won 5 out of the last 6. They've won 3 in a row now. They won the treble. So my predictions are probably going to be like, yes, Man City's going to win the quadruple next season, especially if they sign Declan Rice, which could be possible as well. You know, kind of being battled out. Maybe United come in that equation later on in the transfer window. But yeah, Man City being first, good shout. Liverpool, probably a disappointing 5th place finish. I kind of underestimated how weak their midfield actually was. It just became dysfunctional. Van Dijk just looks the shell of himself. Trent was kind of being floated around all these different roles, was exposed defensively. Now has a much more solid role in central midfield where he can kind of just come in and be much more solid, which makes Robertson a bit more reserved. And I think with Man City, we saw that they were kind of perfecting that system where they would basically play 4 center backs and have such a good ball player like John Stones to come through in the middle, which has caused teams just problems all over the pitch. So we were quite accurate on that one. Let's take a look at who did I put for a surprise player of the season here.
You know, Julian Alvarez is looking to be a fantastic prospect. Haaland stays fit. De Bruyne stays fit. They could be fantastic this season.
Oh, yeah, they were a bit more than fantastic.
And my surprise player of the season, and actually young player of the season, is going to be Julian Alvarez. I think he was brilliant in the Community Shield. I wish United had signed him, but I think he's someone who is going to play into the mold of Pep Guardiola and eventually become Man City's number 9, potentially replacing Sergio Aguero, a long-standing member of Man City, and
so he was definitely the surprise player of the season. He won every trophy that there is to basically win, barring the Carabao Cup this season. He won the FA Cup, he won the Champions League, he won the Premier League. He was also in the World Cup Argentina squad that he was quite influential in as well. I think he will be City's future number 9. I think in a couple seasons, probably Real Madrid will just be like, yeah, here's 300 million. We'll take Haaland. Thank you. That's probably what's going to happen. Young player of the season did go to Haaland, and player of the season did go to Haaland, by the way, for reference. So surprise player was kind of my pick, and I think he was definitely a surprise. I don't think everyone thought that Julian Alvarez was going to be this good. Because he played a part in the Champions League, he played a part in the Premier League, he played a part in the FA Cup, played a part in the World Cup for sure. So it was definitely quite good. Who did I put for player of the season? Let's see.
So for the player of the season, I think that's actually going to go to Harry Kane. And the reason I say that is because I think Antonio Conte getting Spurs into 3rd place, I think Harry Kane's going to be influential to that. His creative aspects of his game have come from strength to strength. And I think he is someone who is so important that if you literally look and say, which player, if removed from the team, can that team not do without? And I think Harry Kane is that. Because basically, if you remove Harry Kane from Spurs, I don't know how they create chances and score goals. The amount of times that he drops off the line and pings the ball in behind, or occupies defenders, or scores goals himself, or has a consistency at scoring, like when he gets penalties, a penalty box threat. He's just a complete overall player. Also could be coming off a high if England were to do well and take home the World Cup as well. So one to watch there. I think Harry Kane is going to be the player of the season.
So Harry Kane would have been player of the season had Erling Haaland not existed. But I do stand by the fact that if you removed Harry Kane from Spurs, they just don't exist. I mean, if Spurs scored 70 goals this season, I mean, Harry Kane scored 30 of them by himself. So Spurs could be as far down as like just barely above or in the relegation spots without Harry Kane potentially. So they were that poor without Harry Kane. If you take Haaland out of Man City, I still think they score 90 goals or whatever they scored this season, 94 I think it was. So I do kind of stand by it. Player of the season was obviously Erling Haaland because he broke the Golden Boot kind of record that's ever been had in a 38 game season. So a bit wrong on that one, but I was second in line, so not too bad for that one, because I think Harry Kane probably would have been definitely up there. Who did I put for the Golden Boot winner? Let's see. The Golden Boot winner, I think as well, is going to be... Harry Kane will be close, but I think ultimately it's probably going to be Mo Salah. Harry Kane was close. He was second. He got 30, and Haaland got 36, I want to say. Salah, I think he was like in the top 5-ish, I want to say. But Mo Salah, unfortunately, was not the Golden Boot winner. Didn't get off to the greatest of starts. Kind of an up and down season for him. Let's see what else I say. I think that's another reason why Kane will probably be player of the season. Yes, Mo Salah might be the Golden Boot winner, but I don't think that Liverpool potentially have as much success in the trophies this season. I think that City, again, will win the Carabao Cup. Anything. Maybe they go up against each other. Liverpool get knocked out early in the FA Cup. Maybe they get far in the Champions League, but I think Salah's Golden Boot win potentially the season outright, or even tied with Kane. I think those two could be the close ones there. Again, Haaland will take some adjustment. Same with Nunez. I think that Salah will win the Golden Boot. So I did say they would take some adjustment, but apparently the adjustment didn't last very long. Haaland did end up winning the Golden Boot, as we know. Salah did score a decent number of goals and was kind of the only one really scoring for Liverpool for the most part. Kane was very close, obviously, getting 30, which was just a crazy season. So got that one slightly wrong there. Let's see who I put to win the Champions League, which is the last prediction here. In the Champions League, and I think this might be a surprise pick for most, but I'm actually going to go with Bayern Munich, and the reason being is because Julian Nagelsmann has changed up the system. He's now got Sadio Mane in there. He's got Serge Gnabry. He's got the likes of Leroy Sané, formerly of Manchester City, Kimmich and Goretzka. If these guys can stay fit, they could be an absolute dynamic outlet that causes all sorts of problems. They're going to obviously walk over the Bundesliga. Shouldn't be any problems there. But I think in European competition, they could be tactically flexible enough to cause teams problems. So, in the end, it ended up being that Bayern Munich did sack Julian Nagelsmann. They brought in Thomas Tuchel, came down to the final day, and Dortmund ended up basically just bottling it. Dortmund just needed to win. That's all they need to do. They win the Bundesliga. Bayern ended up getting it over the line by the end of it, with Musiala getting a goal late on. And I think Bayern Munich, it's not a bad shout. Bayern Munich were the only team to really push Man City in the Champions League. Man City's group was pretty straightforward. Real Madrid kind of just was not the same Real Madrid that we've known in past seasons when they were winning 4, 5, 6 billion Champions Leagues in a row, or whatever it was. Bayern Munich were the only team that really pushed them. In the final, City did look a bit nervy. Inter were just not very clinical. But Bayern Munich, had they had Lewandowski still, I still think that Bayern Munich potentially could have beat them and stopped City right then and there. But it ended up being Man City winning the Champions League, so we got that one wrong as well. So basically what I'm doing is hopefully jinx Man City and predict them all for everything next season. So but yeah, that's gonna do it for the predictions there. Hope you all enjoyed it. We got some of them right. So some of the top 4 things weren't the greatest. Some of the trophy predictions weren't good, but some of them were very good, like West Ham winning the Conference League. We got Crystal Palace's position bang on. We got the relegation kind of a couple places around, so some good positions, some okay predictions, and some pretty bad ones. But let me just think down in the comments below. Did your predictions go well? We're going to be doing them the week leading up to the start of the Premier League as well, so we at least have a lot of information on who's like come in as well for their respective clubs in the transfer window. So it'll be the Community Shield on whatever the Saturday or Sunday is the week before, and then City play Burnley on the Friday. So we'll probably try to do it on the Wednesday or Thursday if we can for our predictions for the upcoming 23-24 FPL season. Hopefully we can get some more right. I'm definitely not going to put Spurs in third or anything crazy like that, but I might do a rogue Chelsea pick because I seem to always do that. But yeah. Yep, and that's going to do it for our predictions. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Scout members area, the one place that you need to be tuned into for the upcoming FPL season. It has a wide variety of resources and tools that will help improve your FPL game today. It has a bunch of different members-only articles written by some of the best FPL managers across the globe, heat maps for all the players and positions, as well as player comparison tools, which will help you see side by side who is going to be more effective for your FPL team, fully customizable stats tables powered by Opta stats, and much, much more. Use the link down in the description below so that you can get access to the Fantasy Football Scout members area today. It'll help improve your FPL game.